Good morning. This meeting is called to order, the Committee on General Government and Operations and Appropriations. And today is Monday, October 2nd, 2023, and the time is 9:04 a.m. The roundtable is a response to the request during the public hearing that was conducted on April 20, 2023. Public notice in compliance with the open government law. The notice of this publication hearing posted on Guam Public News, on portal and the KGTF PBS Channel 12, and disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Monday, September 25th, 2023, and again on Thursday, September 28, 2023. The agenda item, the following item will be heard for this morning's roundtable hearing is on Bill 2-37, and this morning, which is actually an act to add a new Chapter 8B to Title 4 of Guam Code Annotated relative to implementing the Supplemental COLA Adjustment Act, a supplementary cost of living adjustment for Government of Guam retirees who are residents of Guam, and to add a new Section 13108A to Chapter 13, Title 2 of the Guam Code Annotated relative to creating a special cost of living economic service. Fixing note for the bill on 2-37 was requested on June 26, 2023. So this morning we have with us is Mr. Mike Phillips from Phillips Medallion. We have Gary Hiles here from Guam Department of Labor, and we have here Roseanne Jones from the University of Guam, and Paula Blas from Department of Retirement. And my name is Telo Taitague. I am the Vice Chair on Appropriations, and we'll be conducting this until our chair arrives. Thank you first so much for coming today. And today we're going to try and make history. We're going to set some, hopefully set some ideas and rules to put together in a format of a bill that would begin the start of giving a true cost of adjustment for the people of Guam who are retirees. So I just wanted to say a few things here before we get started. As the cost of goods and services increase over time, retirees face many challenges in maintaining a quality standard of living on fixed income. Without regular adjustments to their retirement benefits, retirees may struggle to make ends meet. COLA increases are designed to address this issue by adjusting retirement benefits to keep pace with the rising cost of living. We would like to introduce a substituted measure for Bill 2-37 that ensures retirees keep up with the rising cost of living by implementing a COLA adjustment formula based on Consumer Price Index to be determined by a select committee of economic commerce, retirement, and government officials, as well as the public. The CPI is a measure of the average change in the price of goods, services over time, and is widely recognized as a reliable measure of inflation. Under this substituted bill, the COLA adjustment formula would be based on the percentage change in the CPI over the previous year. For an example, if the CPI increased by 2% over the previous year, the COLA adjustment for retirees would be 2%. The COLA adjustment would be applied to the retirees based on pension amount upon up to a certain maximum percentage increase, which we would like to discuss today. We also propose setting a minimum and maximum COLA adjustment to ensure that retirees receive a reasonable increase in the retirement benefits each year. The minimum COLA adjustment would be set at a certain percentage increase, such as 0.05%, even if the CPI does not increase by that amount. Implementing a COLA adjustment formula based on the CPI, along with establishing a minimum and maximum COLA adjustment percentage increase, would help ensure that retirees are able to maintain a decent standard of living. This approach, with economic experts and responsible caps would be fair and transparent, and it would provide retirees with a predictable and reliable increase in their retirement benefits each year. I recommend that this proposal be considered as a means of improving the financial security of the retirees. It is important to note that the CPI may not accurately reflect the inflation experienced by all retirees. Some retirees may have different spending patterns or may be more vulnerable to certain types of price increases. In these cases, economic advisors may need to adjust their recommendation based on the specific needs and circumstances of the clients. We can also, so that's just a little opening remark of what I'm hoping to accomplish here today, which is to provide a bill, and we may just substitute this whole bill, the discussions I've had with each of you individually as well as other people, is to look at maybe adjusting this bill to something more simple, a simplified bill to get us started. So I've chosen the four of you to come here because you have expertise. You've definitely worked in the field of when it comes to economy and just all around know what is in the best interest of our retirees. So at this point, I think I'm just going to open it up to whoever wants to start off with some ideas on how we can put a bill together that would be the beginning, the start of trying to adjust these COLA amounts to the inflation, the yearly inflation that's growing because it's a fixed income. So, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and start with Gary. I know you guys are like, who's first? You probably won't even raise your hand. No, she goes first. He goes first. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Gary, since I met with you first, on your perception of what would be the best path to go down on this COLA.
First, I'd like to say that thank you for bringing this subject up. With a series of inflation over the years, the retiree benefits and buying power has eroded. So I think it's appropriate to bring it up for a discussion. Years ago, the Social Security for the retirees in the United States was not adjusted for inflation, and then they enacted a law requiring annual adjustment for inflation so that the buying power of retirees would remain the same. If inflation went up by like 5%, the benefit would go up 5% to accommodate that. The government of Guam defined benefit plans. The oldest one and the newest one do not adjust the benefits for inflation. The defined contribution plan may, because it's based on whatever is invested and the earnings on the investment, if the economy grows, the amount in the fund should grow along with inflation. However, that the contribution rates were too low, both on the employee side and the government side, so there wasn't enough to start with to have an adequate retirement. So I think this is definitely an issue that needs to be looked at.
Roseanne, would you like to make some comments before we really get into the meat? I'll let each of you guys just say a few things, and then we'll just, and please feel free, this is a round table. There's no real, to be too formal about this. I'd rather, someone just jump in and saying, hey, that might not be there's an issue with that perspective. So please feel free to jump in anytime. But Roseanne, please.
All right. Thank you, Senator. There we go. Thank you. I'm live. Thank you, Senator. And it's a pleasure to be here with the other panel members today. Coming from the University of Guam, it's probably no surprise that I would call for a study of this, and I think that's what I'm hearing from from this roundtable today that we really need to understand just an appropriate calculation for Guam CPI. There is some interest in making sure that that CPI is appropriately measured, and we can rely on whatever payments and decisions come from that are reliable and valid. So that's key to me, that the CPI for Guam be up to date and appropriately calculated. After that, to be able to understand just who the population is of retirees that do reside on Guam, what their situation is, how we do have the defined benefit program, and as Gary said, we do have the defined contribution program. Are there any differences there that we need to attend to? Because not all retirees are the same in the types of benefits that they receive from the program, so we need to understand that. We'd also need to understand what the pressure points are for our community of retirees who stay, and what some of the offsets to that might be. We do have programs in place for utility assistance, for example. So taking a look at our subsidies for those that are income, that have lower income thresholds and need that subsidy. So we would need to look at just what other kinds of contributions are available to us to help retirees or others on island meet basic services. And I think we have some fine programs there that we'd need to look at how that folds into this. The other is often looking at policy as you develop it. Right now, we're at a very severe pressure point with the cost of utilities and power and just overall food, and it's just one of those times in our economic cycle that it's very expensive, and people do feel the pressure. But when you set policy, you want to make sure that when that cycle changes, you don't have a policy that's out of date with another point in time. So we'd like to look at what are we putting in place and be careful about what you put in place today, that it's going to be enduring, that it's going to be affordable, that it isn't for a particular point in time where there isn't this incredible stress. And the business cycle may change, and that may not be the case. So we need a policy that's kind of fluid and will roll with what the needs are. The other thing is, so we've got that policy lag issue that we have to be paying attention to. The other is the administration of the policy that it's put in place. You don't want anything that is incredibly complicated to administer. So the nice feature of having kind of a one-size-fits-all, it's never perfect, but on the administration side, it's easier to manage and easier to assure and to support. So those are the kinds of things that I would be looking at, not in an academic study, but getting these pieces tested, understanding who the market is, and being able to answer questions to the public when they ask those questions of why this policy? What are you trying to address? How does it help me? How does it not help me? Who's included? And I also look at the equity issue and fairness with those that are in the retirement system that are not here, but live in high-cost areas as well. And so I think you may hear from those voices saying, I live in Hawaii, I live in California, and we too have very high cost of living. How can we be party to this? And I think we need an answer for that. And one final thing with our system here, we tend to mirror the Social Security system, and we need to take a look at the Social Security system, where that's going, what lessons have they learned, because we pattern and mirror and assure that we are at least equal to, if not better than, the Social Security system that we have with our retirement benefits. So I think we'd need a check on that outlook as well. So I'm very grateful to have this group and your leadership to take a look at what are all the pieces, and have the time to look at this, and then offer the public our best thoughts on it.
Speaking of leadership, our chairman, Senator Joanne Agustin, has come. So he's definitely ensuring that this moves forward too, and I greatly appreciate Senator Augustine for you moving directly on this. I know this is dear to your heart as well. So Paula, if would you like to say a few things and touch on some of the things she said? It was great stuff that you brought up. You know, sustainability, you know, in it is one of the biggest things. And okay, please.
Well, thank you for putting this together. But I do like what Dr. Jones was actually saying with regards to being able to determine some sort of policy that we can apply equitably, because you're right, the DB system is patterned after the Social Security system. They actually designed it very similar to the way the Social Security does issue their benefits. I believe that we're here today with regards to the COLA because COLA used to be, well, it still is, but when they first started to do the distribution of COLA, they started out with a flat amount, just a flat amount, whatever that amount would be, and just give it. Then in 88, 89, they tried to link it to some sort of a cost of living index, hence the Lola COLA. That's how we ended up with that. Knowing that there was no way retirement fund could actually administer something like that, because at the time it was just not sustainable. It was not affordable for government or even the retirement fund to actually administer. They went back to the flat rate, one basic dollar amount for everyone across the board. I believe they continued to do that because when they tried to think of doing a percentage of whatever the CPI would be, then you ended up not really benefiting those with income brackets below 40,000. Those in a higher income brackets, and I'm seeing it today, that most of these retirees going forward are going to start hitting higher income brackets because salaries are just higher, much higher now. So when the DB plan and the DB 175 starts to give out those benefits, their annuities are going to be much higher. And the reason I say that is because just looking at our database right now, more than close to 6,000 of the retiree population is below 40. But the new ones coming in are hitting the above 40,000 mark with regards to annuity. But I really like the idea that we're actually coming up with some sort of a calculated way, formula, but at the same time, I don't want to dismiss those that are in a lower income or annuity bracket that maybe they get a much higher percentage, but that's something like Dr. Jones was saying, we've got to determine the types of markets that we're actually going to serve and then take it from there.
Thank you. Before I reach over to Attorney Phillips, I just wanted to read something out of Hawaii, their Hawaii COLA. The state of Hawaii provides COLA to its government retirees in order to help them keep up the rising cost of living. You know, the COLA is based on the CPI. Each year, the state of Hawaii's Department of Budget and Finance calculates the COLA adjustment for government retirees based on changes in the CPI. The DBF compares the CPI for the previous year to the CPI for the current year to determine the percentage increase in the cost of living. The COLA adjustment is then calculated as a percentage of the retiree's base pension amount. The percentage increase is typically limited to a certain maximum amount, which is set by law. For an example, in Hawaii, the maximum COLA increase is capped at 4% per year. The COLA adjustment is then applied to a retiree's monthly pension payment. If the retiree is receiving a pension of $2,000 per month and the COLA adjustment is 2%, then the retiree's monthly pension payment would be $2,040. Not all retirees in Hawaii are eligible for COLA. Eligibility is typically limited to certain categories of government retirees, such as those who retire before a certain date or those who have been retired for a certain number of years. So I just wanted to share that with you on that. Go ahead, Paula, you have.
I was also going to say that the COLA that we do give out is not accrued or added on to the annuity going forward. So
Right.
this particular percentage that we give them every year is going to be based on their base annuity that they actually started with.
Right.
It's not like Social Security. When you give a COLA, it's added on to their benefit.
Right.
The following year, another COLA percentage is given, it's added on to their benefit. So it kind of helps them keep up with inflation.
Exactly. And that's a great segue to next Mike Phillips, because we're looking at how we can sustain this type of additional annuity, based on inflation. How do we give our retirees that in the future? Do they pay into it, to prepare themselves? So, Mike, okay, we'll go ahead and turn on. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators, for the invitation and the bill. As you know, the legislative history of this, as Paula stated, it really goes back to 1988. Our modern day retirement plan or retirement program for our government retirees, I would say, started in maybe 1989. And then there was a drastic cutback when we filed the lawsuit because the law was not being followed. And I'll touch on that just a little bit because 99% of this is policy, and quite frankly, I'm not here for policy, but I do want to mention that when we won that case, it took many, many years. I think this is the 30th anniversary of the filing of the case, but I never, ever, and I'm not saying they didn't do it, but I never heard a single story of the 4,000 retirees, 2,000 were alive at the settlement, any one of them even flying to Rhoda to celebrate, not even Rhoda, let alone a cruise, anything. But I must have heard dozens of stories of them helping their daughter in the Philippines that needs medical treatment, or renovating a kitchen for their kids in another home. I mean, story after story. Broke my heart. Some of the retirees were in hospice when they got the news. And of course, what they said is just so profound, and so you can tell, wow, these guys are really grounded, It's not, hey, it's a windfall. Not at all. My recommendation to start, Senators, is my recommendation is simple, and I think the programs are simple. And everybody who speaks, and especially from their areas, I agree with. But I think if you start with the 1988 program that we had, which is close to, at that time, a mirror of the federal program, maybe even a mirror of what you have in Hawaii, that's a start. And in that case that I brought, there were many valid criticisms, I think. Number one, of course, in no order, would be the market basket, things like that, whether it's fair or not. But, it's the law. We didn't want the law to get in the way of, others that maybe didn't want COLA to be implemented. And so those are legitimate concerns. What is the market basket? Whether we should or should not give COLA, I don't believe is a legitimate concern. I'm going to be honest with you, Senators. We have no business hiring Frank Cruz if we're not going to take care of Frank Cruz. We're not going to ensure that he has enough money to drive to work, has a medical plan of some type, and has a retirement plan. Some of the things I heard earlier go towards what happens when you don't have retirement. You raise wages. When you have great retirement, you don't have to raise the wages as much. That's just basic economics, excuse me. And so here it really is a package deal. And unlike some of the speakers, because I'm not a part, for example, I'll just, poor Paula, right? Paula's been great through all the legislation, and in fact, I try not to mention her name too much because I don't want people to think, hey, but talk about an advocate for the retirees, and so was your dad, Senator, honestly. And so they really have their hearts in it. But I'll tell you, the hard decisions that you can make, if you want to expand our economic base, allow for unions in Tumon. Just allow for unions. You don't have to mandate them, but allow them. Our government employees kind of have a union. It's called the Civil Service Commission. Allow unions in Tumon. And of course, that's not for fun, like Hawaii. Wages will go up. Wages go up, your tax base goes up. Things like that are very, very simple to do. Now, of course, and that's where the speakers here, I think, will be able to, a lot more than me, share the consequences of those kind of enactments. But when you're talking about an all-encompassing bill, which I think this will or should end up being, I think you have to consider those things, and we have to ask ourselves, why are we hiring these people if we can't take care of them? There's something wrong with that. And along with that, ask ourselves, a real simple example. After this recent typhoon, there's nobody on the streets. Before, we would have the gentlemen and the men from DPW, we would have the cafeteria workers, and I can keep naming people that we've contracted out. So what happens when we contract out? One person or group corporation at the top makes a lot of money. People at the bottom make minimum wage. That's generally what happens. The government saves a little bit, one or two people make a lot of money, and the government considers it a public-private partnership, and we've done well. Well, have we? Because the 5 or 10 or 500 people that are hired, I can assure you, under their retirement plan, we're in trouble. And so, in good conscience, we wouldn't hire them at those rates, but we allow a private corporation, and nothing against them. The offer's there, they take it. That's how business works. But from a government perspective, we got to ask ourselves, why didn't anybody come out after the typhoon? Now, we noticed the military was missing. I don't know why they weren't there. But I noticed for sure that we didn't have our own people out there because nobody's working for us. We've contracted out to all the people that would have been there to take care of a lot of those problems. We just contracted it out. So the maintenance in the schools, look at those contracts and see where it says cleanup after typhoon. None. It's not their fault. They can't pay those guys because they're not paid for cleanup after typhoon. A classified DOE employee would have cleaned up after a typhoon. A classified DPW employee, they would have been on the streets. That's what they do. Now, does that mean, like GPA should maybe, we have some extra trucks and extra employees? Well, of course it means that, because we're taking care of the whole package, right? We have typhoons, we have things like that come up. And so if we're just going to rely, because it is cheaper for government, it appears it is in the short run to contract out. But then Paula will tell you what she shared with me, and I'm sure she will. I don't think I should say that she should or she might. Ask her for the numbers with regards to those that, I'm not sophisticated, so I call them 401ks. Ask her how much goes into those 401ks and how quickly they're depleted by our career employees. And then ask ourselves, how can we hire a mechanic or a general laborer, and then when he's finished, and Paula, you correct me if I'm wrong, maybe within 6 months to a year, his entire retirement plan is gone. He has nothing, absolutely nothing. How can we do that? So what you're doing is courageous, it's needed, and I would start, quite frankly, Senators, it's a start with the federal program and consideration for the federal program and how our local federal employees receive their COLA, and as part of their base, as Paula explained. And then number two, compare that to the simple reenactment of Sonny Shelton's law, the base COLA adjustment that was passed in 1988. I believe it was effective in 1989. Those are two good starts. Now, whether you go up or down from there, I think the speakers here and others that you have available can help. For example, the market basket. I'm an advocate of COLA, but I'm not an expert in the market basket. And that example can go on and on and on. And so, for example, and this will be my last one, I promise. If we need to raise money and there needs to be investment, I would go to your dad. So I don't do that. But, you know, he might not welcome it, but I'd say, I'm sorry, Speaker, we need a lot more money. And there was a lot more money that came in. But I don't think that we've saved when we contract out these positions, because we guarantee, even with some of our career employees, that they're not going to have a retirement plan. They have no medical plan. And so have we really saved money? Because who's paying for that poverty class that we've created? In essence, we end up paying because the government does, to a large extent, take care of everything. It's a net, it's a bottom floor like Social Security, but we do in the form of GMH and other aid programs. So if we're not going to adjust that, we're going to be stuck with looking at a small economic package to work with. And what the areas or the time period that Paul is discussing was a limited time period. Now, don't get me wrong, nobody has a crystal ball. So back in the days, for a limited time of Jimmy Carter, and then literally right after 1989. But look now, the last 15, 20 years before the bump in inflation, we had none, virtually none, for approximately, what, 10, 15 years or minor, compared to what the government of Guam would have had to pay way back then. But like the stock market, you know, I mean, it's tanked a few times, but overall, it's a good thing. It's a good investment, if you're prudent about it.
Mike, can you explain what market basket means?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure the other speakers can do a lot better, but in determining whether or not we have inflation, it's based on price, the change in price. So, for example, if you wanted to put cell phones in there that weren't in there, for example, in 1994, housing, rental, all the different things that others are much better apt at providing the correct information about. It likely, our market basket would likely be different from the one we use in Missouri, right? They have different issues and different costs. Here, we have different issues and different costs. And Paul explained some of the concerns. That's a real good example. And so it's kind of policy, but you know, economists will, I think, give you the basics of what you need in there. I don't think that's a deal breaker at all. It's not easy because there's certain people that want to do it right. But quite frankly, if you didn't even want to do it right, you could just let it go like they did in 1988, and it wouldn't be too far off. It wouldn't be precise, but it wouldn't be too far off.
Gary, I know we were talking something similar to market basket versus the cost price index. Can you kind of bring some light to what's the difference between the two? Yeah, the difference between the two. Yeah.
Sure. In order to come up with the price index, it is composed of two things: what the prices of items are, but also the quantities of the items. So if you spend more on housing, that's the price of housing is more important in your cost of living than, say, the price of
How about
ketchup.
How about when you're comparing, like in Missouri, versus Guam? Because how much does it cost, in Guam,
Well,
and can we determine that?
The Guam Consumer Price Index is based on the market basket of what people on Guam buy. And I think that what's interesting is that I looked at the U.S. Consumer Price Index over the last 5 years or so to the Guam Consumer Price Index, and the rate of inflation was almost the same. And also the U.S. Department of Labor has different consumer price indexes for urban consumers, rural consumers, retirees, because what they buy is slightly different. But basically the inflation is pretty similar. So I don't think it would be a worthwhile effort to try to tweak that. I would just choose the most stable index, the U.S. Consumer Price Index or the Guam Consumer Price Index, and go with the best of that. There's much more variation among individuals than there is under different categories of consumers, such as retirees versus urban or rural. The differences among individuals is enormous, partly based on their wealth. If somebody has a big inheritance, owns property, their cost of living is very different. If you have good health or if you have a lot of medical expenses, your cost of living and your individual market basket is very different of what you have to spend rather than the overall average. And I don't think that's something that's, everybody mentioned that you have to keep something that's administratively doable and simple. I don't think we can adjust for each individual's cost of living and how choices. So I think you just have to go with the best overall index and that's
Simplicity,
available.
I think that's
Yeah.
what, any comments to that with regards to the market basket versus, the price cost index and utilizing the individual?
Yes, just one addition to that is the comparison from year to year. So you need to have kind of a stable market basket that you're assessing so that you can look at the inflation and compare to what it was previously. So there's always this look back. And if you're changing up the market basket, then it's hard to say that there's a consistency in that analysis to say, compared to last year, this is what you had to pay, and therefore this is the inflation. The problem is that what we're trying to do is forecast a go forward, which the CPI doesn't do. It just says, this is what, so in a sense, we're compensating you for the inflation that you experienced from your last year. So there needs to be some sense of outlook or go forward, and that's a difficult and different question. In listening to Attorney Phillips, I value what he says about caring and why are we hiring them and the complete package of benefits, not just wages. And I also want to call attention to something that I've been dealing with, and I don't want to go into a lot of detail right now with, and that is we have some retirees that want to come back into the workforce, which is a great thing, not only for us, but for them, personally and financially. And we are stymied by this double dipping rule that says they can only come back at a fixed salary. And that fixed salary was, I'll quote the one that we're using, is $43,740. And I'm being held to compensate someone for the same job because once upon a time they retired from the government of Guam, their salary is fixed. And I've been trying to fight this good fight and say, this is so outdated. How can I ask someone who has great professional credentials? They may have retired 15, 20 years ago. They've done some amazing things beyond that. And how can I be held to just simply give them that salary? So I think we have to look at other policies that affect our retirees, and this is one that I think is just outdated, and quite frankly, from my view, just inappropriate that you have a class of retirees who want to come back into the workforce for whatever reason, and we're not compensating them properly.
I'd like to add on.
And just, go ahead, yeah. Hold on. Just go this way, forward, toward you. Yeah.
The university can have double dipping, but for low salaries. But most of the other agencies, it's not permitted, period. So that might be worth looking at. There's a few exceptions: police department, legislature, and the governor's office. And there might be one or two others, but for the most part, it's prohibited entirely.
It's just so fair. We also have to consider that when the bill was created, we looked at those retirees who have left Guam. And we know that the funding that we provide, or the retirement that they receive, if they spend it on Guam, then that actually yields us about $1.30 to every dollar that we give them, the retirees. About $1.30 actually comes back to the government, in spending. So we're losing our retirees to go off to the mainland when they can actually, some of them can still work. I mean, our age demographics now is increasing to live longer. Gary and I were just talking about that, how people are living a lot longer. The insurance companies are freaking out because, of this. They're living longer, and it's just an opportunity for them to make additional funding, or how are they going to, they're addressing this issue. So, of course, by 2034, there'll be more seniors than there are children, in the States and in Japan. So you're absolutely right, Dr. Jones, with regards to, accommodating something like that, for those who, keep them here on Guam. I know that it was very aggressive by indicating those who live off island will not get the adjustment, because it was about, circulating the funds on Guam, keeping them on Guam. But of course, that's going to be a little bit different. We're coming up to, I also want to recognize my good friend and Senator Nicolas, who's here. Thank you for joining us, the discussion of colon retirement. Would you like to say something? Sure, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I've always found that strange that we would limit somebody because they've already retired. I think that's not fair. After you won the Medal of Honor, you've gone through everything, and then all of a sudden, we cannot let you come back in and do more for the people. I think that's very debilitating and limits our workforce pool, and that's an injustice to hold that work that they've previously done and got their retirement for. I think that's wrong. That's a big injustice, and I think we need to make a change, and I'm willing to do something about it. Also, go ahead, sir.
Just to add to that, as I said earlier, if you don't have a decent retirement plan, then you need wages, right? And if you don't have a medical plan, then somewhere along the way, we're going to pay for it. But I think here, when you have, and I'm talking about skilled individuals, not for example, a political appointee to a deputy position. I'm talking about, you have a classified service where I can retire, but because the ladder is designed correctly, I look at myself and I don't want to retire. Because if I retire, I don't make that next step, and the next step is so meaningful that if I can do the work, and as you were told, there's a lot of people out there, then I'm not going to retire, because I can do this. Now, you're either going to pay it in retirement on the low salary, or you pay it on the high salary. But I'm not talking about the political appointments. I'm talking about the employees that have been there 20, 30 years, and it hurts the department or the agency when you lose them. And we're losing them because we don't have the pay structure that would be more advantageous for them to work, because it saves us a lot of money, than it is, it's more advantageous for them. What we don't have is a structure that makes it more advantageous for them to work than to retire and hopefully come back one day with the minimum, low payment. That's what I think is the more organized merit system, is such that if we do, and we do have those people, and again, I'm talking about the career employees, basically the experts in their field, as Senator mentioned, those that have won the Medal of Honor, then really that speaks to the fact that we don't have at least that portion of our merit system. It needs some work. I should leave it at that.
I think somewhere in there is a compromise, right? But there's. I mean, I really agree with Senator and having Senator Telo and having a plan to properly compensate for the consumer price index. However, we need to grow the economy. We need to find a way, like how you said, to ensure that basket moving forward is full, so we can make those adjustments year to year. But I thank Senator Telo for bringing this to the forefront, because I was cornered a couple of weeks ago by some retirees, and they were saying, Senator, you got to do something, because we're on fixed incomes, and it didn't occur to me what fixed income was until they mentioned it to me, and then I had to really think about it, and wow, fixed income is really what it is. And so if inflation grows out of, I guess, faster than what they can invest or whatever their they're able to live with, it's going to be very difficult. So thank you, Senator.
I was just actually going to make a comment with regards to Dr. Jones's double dipping. You know, the provision that exists under the DB statute was actually there to not allow individuals to come back to enhance benefits with regards to retirement benefits if they retire and then come back and add on more years to get a higher annuity. But that doesn't exist anymore. So the double dipping provision, I mean, there's a joke in my office. It's easier to identify who can't as opposed to who could double dip, because there is actually quite a number of positions that are eligible to double dip. So I would like to revisit.
Okay. And I'd like to ask each one of you a question, because I know that the Bill 2 is really fully loaded with a lot of ideas and a formula that's in there that I think need to study, as Dr. Jones mentioned earlier. But what I'm thinking of doing, Mr. Chair, is just take this bill back, actually either amend it completely, and just put together a task force, a group of individuals to come to the table to sit and discuss what do we look at? Do we look at fair market value, or the market basket versus the CPI? Are we being concerned of the retirement and whether they can sustain any type of annuity, what can be contributed into that? There's just so many facets that we can move on discussions to provide the end result, which is a simplified formula every year to determine and incorporate the outlook of something that has already been hitting us, the inflation, and then trying to move forward and adjust it. My whole perspective is having this task force to provide their recommendation with all these put into place, and then meet with the oversight chair of appropriations to discuss with them what would be a true, adjustment needed for those who make 40,000 below, those who make, 80,000, or above. What is their adjustment for a cost of living? We talked about individuals, Gary brought up that could be very complicated. I mean, you can reach and you can go hundreds of samples, and what we want to do is simplify this. So my question to you is a task force. Who should sit on this group of a think tank to come together to discuss these with the professional? I'm going to start with Paula first, and please state yourself if you want. Paula, actually, I'm thinking, and one from the public, one that has experience, but yeah, so Paula, who, other than, you're right, Senator, other than the four of us here, or the four of you there, who else should sit on this task force? Or please, anybody, speak up. Anybody else? Yeah.
I have a comment. A simple little fix. If you just want to adjust the $2,000 COLA, you could just adjust it by the Guam or the U.S. CPI. So if the $2,000 supplement would buy the same amount of stuff. So if the inflation went up by 5%, if you adjusted it by 5%, cumulatively each year, that would make the $2,000 keep up with inflation. But it wouldn't keep up the buying power for the retiree, because if your annuity was $50,000 and you had over a period of years 20% inflation, then you've lost $10,000 in buying power. So even though you made the $2,000 COLA keep up with inflation, the rest of your buying power is not kept up with inflation. So that's going to be a much more, you would need to supplement maybe $10,000 per annuitant, and that's going to be a problem for the general fund. I think a minor tweak would be to adjust the 2,000 COLA by the rate of inflation. to adjust the all of the annuities by inflation, it's really important over a long time because it's cumulative. What may be adequate, generally the idea is when you retire, if there's no inflation that you are managing to live on your current income, then if you get a similar income throughout your retirement, you'll be okay. But if there's inflation that's persistent over a number of decades, your buying power could be cut in half, so or worse. So that there should be something in the retirement formulas to adjust for inflation. And I think the only way to do that would be to have a actuarial study to see how much it's going to cost and what changes in contribution rates would be necessary in order to vest that to have a plan like Social Security does, where they have contribution rates that are to allow for the adjustments for inflation longer term. And we've been lucky over the last decade or so that inflation's been very moderate, so it hasn't been much of an issue. But even if you have 2% a year over 20 years, that's a 40% cut. So I think something is needed on that line.
Anybody else? Anyone else that to sit on this task force, Gary, that other than the 4 that are here?
I think I would
How about BSP?
involve, I would look at probably contracting out to an actuarial firm that has experience in retirement funds.
Yeah, we actually have our own actuary that actually does determine what the contribution rate is going to be able to pay future benefits or the benefits for the following
So
fiscal
maybe
year.
if there's a policy initiative from the legislature, we want them to look at what in order to have the fixed benefit amounts or the benefits that are fixed at your current rates, to have those adjust for inflation. What would that involve? And I think that would be good work for an actuary to see. Some of it, I think, would be, since the funds are invested in stocks, to some extent, if we have inflation, the value of those stock assets and the benefits increase. But those increases may not be enough to cover inflation. Just depends.
Gary, I think you're mixing things a little bit. The way I'm understanding is because we're talking about the annuity versus a COLA. You're talking annuity, it's no different in the military. Like for the military people that retire, their pay goes up every year. That's set because it's part of their contribution to begin with.
That's right.
You pay for this. If you don't pay for it, and Paula will agree with me, my dad used to say, no ticket, no laundry.
Right.
Period.
So what I'm saying is,
So we gotta be careful how we say that.
So the big picture would be ideally to include that in the plan, so it's automatic. So the legislature wouldn't have to appropriate a certain amount.
And the COLA would go away because it'd be part of the annuity.
Yeah.
That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because-
if you're
because-
including the COLA in the annuity.
No, because if you contribute, it becomes
right.
part of your retirement plan.
That's right.
You paid for that. There's no more COLA. We need to remind ourselves of that COLA was, when the legislature started it, I used to talk to my dad a lot about this, and I didn't like the way the COLA was given. It was given as a gift. That gift needs to stop. And exactly how Senator Telo brought it up, because I talked to her about her bill, and I'm in support of the bill, but we got to make sense of it. Okay? And exactly how Ms. Jones said she's going to do a study, that's great, so we know where we're going. But we have to set a set amount. I mean, sure, it's at one point, I think the legislature gave $500 or something for COLA. And then it went up to 1,000, and it's now at 2,000 plus. So we got to be careful because Senator Telo's trying to make sure that when we're going to do a COLA, it is a true cost of living allowance. But if we wanted to make it part of the annuity, you pay into it, then you get that, then your pay gets adjusted, your retirement gets adjusted. Then that means you're not qualified no more for COLA. The COLA would be for everybody else that didn't get to pay into that. So we can separate the group. But that's something that has to be introduced separately. And when we talk about the folks coming in, my colleagues, we always have to remind ourselves that when we pass a bill to allow hiring of retirees, if you wanted to include them to participate in the retirement, then we got to get with the retirement to make sure that they're not just, I'm come back for a year, and then all of a sudden now you add 20,000. No, it doesn't work that way, because you didn't pay $20,000 for the past 20, 30 years. You got to be careful how we want to word this. And once we do it, then it'll work. And as Senator Telo brought up, she may want to withdraw the bill, start a new bill. I will hold the bill for her. I will hold the bill, so we do the task force, we do the study, so that we can make it work right. Because a lot of retirees, yes, they're in a fixed income. There's no doubt about that. Paula and I are in the same age group where we hear these retirees. We see them every day. And all they say is, I need help, I need help. But remember, COLA's given once a year. If we adjust it to monthly, they may benefit even better. Instead of $2,000 or $2,300 end of year, maybe what, $100, $200 a month? It actually breaks out to the $2,000. But if they get it monthly, then they can make adjustment of what they need to do. Then the COLA, the cost of living allowance, everything can work its way. Right? Senator Telo.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That being said, I try to always be a time, on time. I know that many of you have appointments, and I greatly, greatly appreciate, not just myself, but I'm sure the retirees are knowing that we are working on this. We're trying to help those who are on a fixed income, like Senator Nicolas, meaning to meet people and realizing really what it means to be on a fixed income when the prices of everything else goes up, and you're still on that same salary amount or that retirement amount. I'd like to thank you. I think one of the things, if you agree, that BSP should sit on this task force as well. Other than that, please feel free to open up and tell me who, text me or, email me on any of your suggestions on this task force. So what I'd like to do, Mr. Chair, is basically if we could amend Bill 2 and just cut everything out and just incorporate this task force to meet very soon. I'm sure that you will be sitting on this task force. I'm hoping you'll accept it. And let's work on a formula, a simplified formula, and other ideas that might work for this. So other than that, it is 10 o'clock. Mr. Chair, if we can, go ahead and adjourn. So and I'm sorry if, I know everyone is on a time clock, so I know you want to get out of here, so I'm not going to allow you to speak anymore. Okay, so just go ahead. Okay, Mr. Chair.
And with that, I want to thank everyone for attending this roundtable. And you can expect that we'll come up, because, Senator Telo is my vice chair. So expect that the government Operation Appropriations is going to designate a task force. So it'll be very easy, because we can create that in our office, very easy. And just have it done, and then we'll call you. So before we even amend the bill, because I don't want the bill to go forward and then everybody says, well, when is it going to happen? Well, let's get it let's get it going. Let's get it going, because I like to see this bill pass. Will benefit the retirees, period. Because I'm going to soon retire. And yourself. So, and with that, me too. I'm going to end the roundtable, but I'm not going to end the hearing on this bill. We'll adjourn the roundtable, and we look forward to the task force very soon. I've got schedules every month, so we can do a roundtable and do the task force and keep it going, keep it hot. Because otherwise, if we delay a day or a month, it'll just water down to almost nothing again. And I want to keep it alive. Keep it alive, get the information so that when the amendment is, in fact, proposed by Senator Telo, we're going to push it forward. There's enough senators. I'm going to join that group. We're going to push it forward so to make it work. It's for the benefit of the people of Guam. And we're going to look at that issue of, instead of private contracting, we're going to concern ourselves on how we can benefit, because there are a lot of Guam retirees that want to come back, but they're like, I'm not going to come back. If I'm going to make the minimum, I left at this rate, and I have this expertise, and you don't want to pay me for that, I'm not coming back. Bottom line. And they'll go to the private companies, and they're making that rate. Okay, and with that, the time now is 10 o'clock, or a little bit after 10. 10:04, and we'll thank you, and Jesus Maze, and we will meet again very soon. Thank you. Take care.